Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jenny Davis and I'm here to welcome you tonight to this very auspicious occasion, the Great Gynae Debate. Now, 3 years ago, I stood on this very spot to introduce the unsuspecting world that we really can talk about down there with impunity. So it feels very appropriate to be here again on this special occasion. In fact, it was during the Vagina Monologues that I first met Kath Mazzella when she came to her theatre company with some ideas for promoting awareness of Gynae. And Kath is really a remarkable woman, as I'm sure many of you here know. And she's made such an enormous contribution to the lives of women around the nation. And I was astonished when I realised that I knew so very little about the cancers and the conditions that Kath was talking about, and how much women needed educating. And in fact, of course, so do our menfolk as well. In fact, what we found in the Vagina Monologues was that our possibles was, which I'll explain later, was something, a subject very dear to our hearts, and to other parts of people's anatomy, but very dear to our hearts. And that reference, a possible, is perhaps a polite term for that part of her anatomy, the Vagina Monologues, and afterwards she told us that her mother called that part of the body possible, because she said, you wash up as far as possible, and you wash down as far as possible, and then you wash possible. And as we all know, there's a very large number of weird and wonderful terms for those parts of our anatomy, which just proves how much both sexes need to think and talk about them. So my job tonight is to introduce in a moment our wonderful teams for the Great Gynae Debate. On Susan Moushart's team, we have Dr. Ian Hammond and Dr. Jenny McCloskey, and on Peter Holland's team, Dr. Gabrielle Morrissey and Margaret Heverin. A wealth of knowledge, expertise and talent who will compete tonight to be the A team in all things gynecological. Now, none of them are lightweights in their field, I'm here to tell you. So please, welcome to the stage. On one hand, the mighty Mousharts, and on the other hand, the hefty Hollands. Teams tonight have to sing for their supper. We again are preparing a special team of ambassadors to travel the world and advocate on our behalf, speak eloquently and entertainingly on our favourite subject, and generally raise awareness about gynecological conditions. Now, this team will naturally stay in the best hotels, wine and dine, go to exotic locations. Didn't tell you about this, did I? Go to exotic locations, nothing but the best for ambassadors on such an important topic. Of course, we do have to raise the money first, so it might not happen in their lifetimes, but just in case our two teams tonight are hotly contesting their right to be our world ambassadors. And you, the audience, will be our judges. So, sharpen your senses, gather your wits, and their fate is in your hands. Each member of the teams will speak 5 minutes only, ladies and gentlemen, and I will introduce them one by one, and each team will speak. And Natalie, can I introduce Natalie down here? Natalie is our timekeeper. Could you do a little demonstration for us, Natalie, of the bell? Your 5 minutes will be up when you hear the bell, but you will have warning. At 4 minutes 30 seconds you'll get a little ding. Or, well, a ding or a dong. Okay? That's your 4 minutes 30 seconds cue. And after, if you go on after 5 minutes, I'm afraid you receive the Pumpkin Award, the dreaded Pumpkin Award. So, they are going to demonstrate for us why we should send them around the world on our behalf, and I'm pretty sure that we'll learn a lot and be vastly entertained along the way. Before we start, Could I, first of all, thank Black Tulip for the wonderful decoration of flowers they've given us tonight. Very suggestive, I may say. And could I also request that we all turn off mobile phones, pagers, and all those things that go beep in the night when they shouldn't. And now I'm going to introduce our first speaker. Now, our first speaker tonight is an internationally renowned author, columnist, academic, and social commentator who also happens to be a stand-up comic. One of her books, Wife Work, is published, and as she says, argued over, in no less than 6 languages. She's currently a senior research fellow in the Faculty of Media, Society and Culture at Curtin University, and is working on a new book, which she says is about women and happiness, and I think, Susan, your words were, well, I enjoy a challenge. And it's called What Women Want Next. Now, you must have noticed, Susan, there are a few women in the audience tonight, so I suggest you muscle around Susan in the bar afterwards and give her a few hints of what you'd like next. She's also, of course, a survivor of many performances of the Vagina Monologues. I'm speaking of the mighty Dr. Susan Mousehart.
Guys, I'm going to talk fast. 5 minutes, huh? I'm here to persuade you to elect our team to be WA's gynecological ambassadors to the world. You have no idea how much I need the diplomatic immunity. Okay, but enough of my relationship history. There are better reasons to elect us than that. First, I'd like to point out to you how superbly qualified our team is to spread the word on women's sexual health and happiness. Dr. Gynae McCloskey is director of the Sexual Health Clinic at Royal Perth Hospital. Professor Ian Hammond is director of gynecology at King Edward. He's a very nice guy anyway. As for myself, although I have no formal medical training, I've had the enormous privilege of divorcing any number of medical practitioners. So they insisted the pleasure was all theirs. Anyhow, the main thing is I've been in remission for many years now. Our team has given a tremendous amount of thought to the structure of the gynecological embassy, or perhaps ministry of sexual examination, that we would like to establish. Now, especially the logo. The logo is terribly important. You've got to have a great logo. We've been working a lot on that one. And Ian, thank you for that last suggestion. But I don't know, I just don't think a winged speculum really captures the spirit. Jenny and I talked about it. It leaves us cold. Anyway, obviously it's not just the logo for our proposed embassy that's important. There's not just a logo, there's also the business cards. That's terribly important, and our badges is horribly important. We spent quite a bit of time working out our titles, and I think it's fair to say we're pretty proud of them. Now, Ian put his hand up straight away. To be the official vagina examiner. Personally, I thought we should have had open auditions, but Ian disagreed. Now, Jenny wanted to take a more holistic view, although frankly, how you can be more holistic than official vagina examiner, I don't know. But anyway, she would like to be known as, and oh sorry, we've got badges for people here. Ian? Okay, Jenny would like to be known as the official or official examiner. From all I've heard of her, she's really good at orifice politics. And we understand there's a lot of openings in that field these days. And me, well, I wanted to be an examiner too, but these guys didn't really leave me much to choose from. Then I thought, hey, I'm interested in how we talk about our sexual health, which is how I ended up as the official oral sex examiner. Somebody had to do it. It's a tough job. In this online. Now, I've just deleted a large portion of my talk because I don't want to hear that pumpkin thing going on. The main reason we don't hear more public debate about women's sexual and reproductive health, is it a matter of ignorance or apathy or ideology? No. It's the vocabulary, stupid. We just feel dumb saying the friggin' words. As Eve Ensler noted in the Vagina Monologues, a play my mother consistently refers to as the down there dialogues. Anyway, As Eve Ensler says, vagina is a problematic word. It's a word nobody really wants to say. And she's right, you know. I mean, it could be a good name for a sandwich, maybe. You know, I'll have the toasted vagina with the eggplant and mozzarella. But a body part, I don't think so. Clitoris is, of course, even worse. Verity James once said that clitoris sounded like something that should be growing up a trellis. It's lovely this time of year. You know, I didn't even find out I had a clitoris till I was a senior in high school, and even then I didn't tell my mother for fear she'd take it away from me. You're not going out of the house wearing that, that's what you're saying. I vowed I would do things differently with my own girls, and I did. I told them all about their anatomy very early on in the piece, and I'm proud of that. Mostly, I'm proud of that. I did have a couple of second thoughts the day I heard my 3-year-old singing, "I'm a great big clitoris, being through." Anyway, listen, menstruation is another alarming word. Who came up with that? I'll give you a hint. Menstruation. Menstruation. You know what I'm saying? You sound like an idiot saying that word. And you look like an idiot. Menstruation. You look like a bleeding duck. Honestly, how many consonants does a word need? It's like something out of a Welsh street directory. Up yonder lies the village of menstruation. Anyway, now contrast words like vagina and menstruation, which are so icky, with our vocabulary for guys' bits, which they're so friendly. Dick, for instance. There's such a nice word. Dick. It sounds like your pal. Good old Dick. Glad to see you, Dick. Long time no see, Dick. But enough of my relationship history. Even dickhead is a kind of affectionate term. Calling somebody a vagina head just wouldn't work. And then there's balls, right? You can't get much friendlier than tossing a few balls around. Nuts is another feel-good kind of word, as long as they're not crushed or salted. But enough of my relationship history. Then there's chops, of course. Well, with the balls and the nuts and the chops, if you didn't know you were talking about a guy's crotch, you'd almost think you were on a picnic or something. The weenies, the buns, the list goes on and on. Okay, look, if guys had ovaries, I bet you anything they would not call them ovaries. They'd call them something much more hard-boiled. We don't call our ovaries anything. We don't refer to them at all. Unless we get pregnant or we're teaching our kids about menstruation, in which case we're so focused on not looking like a duck that we don't even think clearly. Now, I think that when you think about your ovaries, not yours, theirs, are the most awesome organs in the world. This is kind of ovarian because it's round and it's full of seeds. I'm going to keep talking. Okay, maybe girls can't weigh into a milk bottle, but God has given us a consolation prize. We can populate the earth. As far as the future of the species is concerned, our ovaries are quite literally where it's at. Don't they deserve a cooler name? Something like, I don't know, pods? Oh, baby, I can feel that down in my pods. And, you know the pet names for vagina? Can I just go on for a second? I don't have much more. And I'm out of here. Okay, our words for vagina, we have some nicknames, but none of them really hits the spot. Let's face it, pussy is wussy, cunt is too blunt, and twat is kind of grot. My own suggestion is we adopt something that goes nicely with dick, maybe Dora.
Well, fancy getting rid of the pumpkin first time up. Wow, okay. Now, the captain of the opposing team needs little introduction to a Perth audience. You may well know him as a very fine actor. In fact, he started his working life as an actor with the National Theatre Company at the Playhouse in Perth in 1964. When I was born, of course. And very quickly he was snapped up by the radio and TV moguls, and although he has continued to work as a thespian just occasionally, Peter has had a hugely illustrious career as a TV and radio announcer and presenter ever since. Peter's been an important daily part of our lives for 32 years, can you believe that? and as appearing, of course, on ABC and Channel 9. And now he's passing on his expertise as a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Communications and Cultural Affairs at Edith Cowan University. Please welcome to the microphone our very own Peter Holland.
Well, shit, how do you follow that? As the sole layman amongst tonight's speakers, I suppose I might be expected to take a somewhat different approach to the topic. In fact, I wonder whether I've really been invited here by mistake. Clearly, all of us need to be familiar and comfortable with talking about the workings and problems associated with our bodies, but not only that, I think most importantly how those workings and problems make us feel about ourselves. Any man, whether he be a son, a brother, a father, a lover, a friend, whatever, should be able to talk with the woman he cares about and the women he cares about in his life about their health and their well-being in all its aspects. Anyway, if I can't talk about matters gynecological, how the hell am I going to get my wife to listen when I want to talk about my prostate? Which at my age, sadly, I have to think about. But I hope you'll all forgive me, and perhaps some of you won't, if I admit that initially I wasn't really aware there was a taboo as a man. I thought, okay, we talk about this stuff all the time, don't we? I hear women talking about it all the time. Which may explain why I don't get invited to very many dinner parties. But I did, after receiving the invitation to be here tonight, realise that I really needed to inform myself a little more about the issues. So I asked at my family dinner table. Now, my family dinner table consists of one man and 3 women. One is 11, one is 17, and one is my wife. And I said that I wanted to ask whether they felt there was a need for more explicit gynecological discussion around the dinner table, for instance. Ian, the very few men in the audience will recognise immediately when I refer to that withering look that only a 17-year-old girl can give her stepfather. It is totally crippling. Why? The 11-year-old, of course, you could all pick it. Yuck. Yuck. Really didn't want to go there. My wife, on the other hand, suggested that we should consult. I don't know if any of you have seen this fairly new computerized toy that's on the market. It purports to be a sort of mind reader. You think of a word, you can write it down, you can say it out loud, and this computer will work out the word that's in your head. It is amazingly accurate. It keeps asking you a series of questions, which, by eliminating the possibilities, it will come down to, so I said, vagina. I really buggered that computer. We tried it twice. The first time, it was amoeba. The second time, and you're not going to like this, steak. I did my best, right? It left me wondering what sort of parties it gets involved in. So, okay, I had to admit in the end that gynecological matters are not easily incorporated into daily conversation, even with a computer. So why? Is it an ingrained cultural taboo? In all seriousness, I suspect paternal influence, that we learn at a very early age that some bodily functions and parts are not referred to in polite company. On the other hand, I believe we have come a long way in our lifetime. Gynecological health is firmly on the public agenda. Women's magazines include articles on fibroids and endometriosis, along with stories on Jerry's curves that get her dates. Kylie seeking a new French pad, posh, this is a match for her meal, Beckham plays low, I don't understand this shit. But just look at any women's magazine and you will see articles on women's health. ABC and BBC Radio, my wife Rosemary is a radio producer, she for me looked up the ABC and BBC websites on this, and we got a veritable feast of discussion topics. It goes over 3 pages here, and I'm not going to get the pumpkins, so I'm not going to read them all. But cervical smear testing, is it more effective? This is just over the last month or two on both ABC and BBC. Endometriosis treatments, symphysis pubis dysfunction, how do midwives assess the severity of tears to the perineum during childbirth. There is a huge amount of debate going on in our society, or dialogue I should say, in our society at the moment in the media. Oh, and by the way, if you can come across a wonderful interview with a woman who works as a gynecological model at a university in her spare time. She's a grandmother and she enjoys it. But is it enough? With the amount of information available, are we still failing to know how to talk to each other? Give up with the bell, right? Are we still failing to know how to talk to each other within our families and our friendships? Do we still hide behind the genteel lace curtain of women's problems when we're talking? For instance, I'm thinking particularly of a colleague of mine who disappeared from the workforce with women's problems, instead of us talking about endometriosis. Where else, beside the now traditional forums, I should say, for women's health issues, can we introduce gynae matters into the conversation? Can we get celebrities to discuss the welfare of their reproductive organs when doing endless promotional interviews about their new film? How about unexpected articles included in the sporting pages of the West Australian? Or could Gynae, for instance, sponsor Roe McManus to ask each of his female guests about her gynecological health, and each of his male guests about the welfare of his partner's parts? But would that be enough? Clearly not. What else can we do to make this the most talked about area of health? And I'm getting to the point. I believe that to achieve the desired outcome that we all share here this evening, the best course we can follow is prohibition. Think about it, there's nothing like making something forbidden to increase its attractiveness. Lobby the state government to enact legislation making the discussion of gynecological disorders a criminal offence. Elderly couples could have their homes seized by the state if they're overheard discussing mother's polycystic ovary syndrome while hanging out the washing. If you want a culture to flourish, drive it underground. It wouldn't take long before you'd know what was being discussed when you saw a little group of pale-faced, strained faces huddled over their coffee in midwinter, sitting at the footpath table outside the cafe. Watch the fellow looking nervously over his shoulders as he ducks into the shop front with the bland facade, which everyone knows is a speakeasy or gynae-easy. Not going to speak though.
Tell me you had another page.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got this club, you see, it's called the Speak Gynae. It's crowded, there's a party atmosphere, people hold secret and animated discussions about the functioning of their bodies. The illegal nature of the club adds to their glamour. Mind you, there's always the risk of a raid with burly policemen coming in. What were you talking about under the table today? Police questions separately, get into trouble. One of you says, oh, we were just talking about travel. The other one says, we were talking about the footy. Before long, of course, there'd be a thriving mail order industry operating out of factory units in Canberra, posting plain cover packages of gynecological publications and sanitary products to every household in Australia. And finally, think of the spam.
That's your next move, I reckon. Dr. Gynae McCloskey is a sexual health physician, head of sexual health clinic at Royal Perth Hospital, the author of Your Sexual Health. She comes complete with an entourage of disgusting-looking instruments around her waist, which she will tell you all about. She's currently doing her PhD on the human papillomavirus. She's actually been working in the area of sexual health since 1984, and she's a fellow of a college of sexual health physicians. Please welcome to the microphone Dr. Gynae McCloskey.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I'd also like to mention my esteemed colleagues here that we are actually from the Ministry for Sexual Examination, and I have the position as official or official examiner for vaginal performance standards. Just so that you are aware of my credentials, I mean, it was a fabulous introduction, but really in 20 years of working in sexual health, one of my colleagues has sort of described to me the experience that I've actually had, and I'd like to really let you understand that experience. And I deal with both men and women. So if all the penises of all the patients were laid end to end, it's actually been described that I would have actually seen a cumulative dick that stretches all the way from Perth to Fremantle, around the roundhouse as well. To negate my experience of examining vaginas, and hence my interest in vaginal performance standards, is if all the vaginas were laid end to end, it would actually make a giant channel that stretches all the way from Perth to Rotter. My colleagues' experience here, well, I think we'd actually get to South Africa. Now, I did say I mentioned men. So if all the anuses were laid, all I can say is it would make a giant, I can say the word, a giant ring that would fit around your anus. And then if we stitched all the vulvas together, and I've got some of the vulvas that Dr. Hammond examined as well, that would actually make a giant vulva that's even bigger than the whacker. But actually, I visualise it as making a manta ray that would itself up to the moon. And so, anyway, I'd like to now go on and just define for you, because I am the official or official examiner, that the definition, the working definition we have of sexual intercourse is that it is, of course, polymicrobial, polyorificial recirculation. That was just to make it really clear to any of you who are unaware of that. But when I first started trying to do this talk, I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? So I actually started to ask my patients to help me and my colleagues to help me. And I said, well, why don't we talk about it? And the first patient I actually spoke to said, well, look, women do talk about their bits. And what amazed me, she actually said, it actually happens in graffiti. And I said, graffiti where? And she said, on the back of toilet doors. And I said, I haven't seen that. She said, well, the arts building at the university. So I was very interested with that extraordinary piece of information. And then I was actually up in the operating theatre, and everyone thought, because if you pierce it, why don't we talk about it? Everyone thought it was a talk on genital piercing. And so he then told me about the news article that he'd just written on a gentleman who had a Prince Albert piercing. And of course this gentleman had forgotten to tell the person who was involved with doing an MRI scan on him, of course, that he had this genital piercing, and of course that it was a very sad tale, and instead of having a Prince Albert, he was just turned into a page boy. My registrar at King Edward also helped me with looking up actually all about genital piercing in Prince Albert, and that was quite interesting because I found that it was actually a Victorian tool that they had, because the men wore such tight pants in the times that Prince Albert himself used to strap his penis to his thigh. But then I was told by another registrar, again at the hospital, about the girl who'd actually had sex with a man who was pierced. And she'd been admitted with vaginal lacerations and required a blood transfusion and suture. And when I actually told that to another nurse. She said, oh, he forgot to change his studs and still had the sharp ends on it. So it really means these days, men used to look at the rings on women's fingers. I think you need to now look at the rings on men's members. But then I went to the King Edward Memorial RMO dinner, and here we have this registrar from King Edward who gave a fabulous talk, but then ended up saying that he'd actually heard about a gynaecologist doing a blowjob. And I mean, can you imagine someone like Ian doing a blowjob? And we were all shocked that he described the fact that really he came from England, and in this remote part of England, what a blowjob really is a blowjob, which refers to a vaginal hysterectomy. And then I rang a friend in Sydney, because whenever I'm doing talks, I always get help from her. And before this, one of the residents, one of the students, the medical students, because I asked them to help me with my talk too, and one rushed up and said, did you hear the SBS show on the clitoris? And of course I've missed it. So anyway, when my friend said, oh, did you hear about the girl who actually had a clitoris the size of a watermelon? And I said, oh no, that's ridiculous, it couldn't be that big. And she said, it was actually her boyfriend was talking about the size of the boyfriend actually said, I've got a girlfriend who's, her clitoris is like a watermelon. And we said, no, it can't be like a watermelon. He said, no, I was talking about the taste, he said. So anyway, really just to wind up, I'd like to just say that my job as an official examiner is actually very easy, because basically all I do is examine sexual orifices. All my patients will sit for the examination. The other thing is that it's quite advantageous. They actually also mark themselves. And just for example, this girl came in to see me and she had these green marks on her thighs. And she had been to doctor, and even been to a couple of dermatologists as to what these green marks were. And I just asked her, I said, tell us, what sort of profession is your boyfriend? And she said, oh, he's a gypsy. I said, ah, yes, doesn't wear gold earrings. The other thing about my patients is, they come already with their own marks, they come with their own ticks, but most of these are mistakenly diagnosed to actually be crabs instead. And the other thing is that all of my patients have already scored for themselves. So the one thing I do emphasise to my patients, that I get asked multiple times for the women, would I do a rebore? And that's definitely out. I never do rebores. And the men say, come and chop it off. And I never do amputations. These are things I never do in my work. So all I have to do, because they've marked themselves, ticked themselves, come in already scored, all I have to do is give results. And this is done differently to the usual examination results. They're not published, they're not put up in the notice board, and I actually do give these in confidence. And all I can say is there's a very wide range of scores. And we even allow the patients the opportunity to alter their score if they want to, and we provide them with free rubbers to do that.
Thank you, Jenny. It sounds fun in your practice. Our next speaker is someone we females all need by our side at some time in our lives, a women's health advocate. Margaret Heffernan comes from a background of marketing and communications and is an inspiring gynecological, I've said that so many times tonight, I know I'm going to remember it sometime, gynecological cancer activist. She has received the Peoplescape Federation Award and the Advance Australia Foundation Award for services to the community and making a difference to the Australian way of life. In 1997, she received the British Medical Association Award for Educational Excellence. She is associated with many professional organisations and presents conference papers around the world. She has recently initiated and authored with Professor Michael Quinn the Gynecological Cancer Guide, Sex, Sanity and Survival. and she's flown all the way from Melbourne to be here with us tonight. Please welcome Margaret Heffernan.
Your votes at the end of this evening, I would be very, very concerned about marshalls more. The ministry, politics, what does it engender in your mind? Most politicians I know chew up a lot of money, blow a lot of hot air, and I suppose that's why McCluskey and Hammond never have to warm up their speculums before they We take an entirely different perspective. The word cunt. Yes, we laugh, we snigger. I was educated by the nuns, I'm in horror. The word cunt actually was not taboo in the year 1230. There was even a grope cunt lane in London, where the prostitutes used to go for bawdy behaviour. Cunt actually was the proper term used for women's bits, as they called it in Old England 1500 years ago, and I'd asked Dr. Hammond and you other males in the audience who started to make it an insult. C.S. Lewis, Alice in Wonderland, and yes, we do wonder why in the hell we're all rocking up for gynecological cancer tests, said that as soon as you deal with sex in explicit terms, you have to choose between the language of the nursery, the gutter, and the anatomy class. McCluskey's tried to enhance this with her view of anatomy, but she's dressed there in silly plastic things, and clearly they're not paying her enough to buy a decent belt. Carl's attempted to get it into the gutter, and I assume that Hammond will rise it to the anatomy class. Now, can you imagine going along for a gynecological examination with the current vernacular in the community where most women wouldn't know their parts? I know I've got a vagina, an ovarian, endometriopian, a fallopian, and this and that and whatever, because I had to do the bloody research for this book. Can you imagine Hammond there with his green glove on and says, "Lie down, I'd like to look at your vagina." And she says, "Well, look, you old chicken neck, custard chucker, lump of me, one-eyed milkman, purple-headed yogurt thrower," which means dickhead. Which is most people terrified of male doctors looking up their vaginas. She said, "Do you really mean my chuff doo-doo, trenwanny, slop, gizm, pod, honey pot, spunk, bing, black cat with a cutthroat, meat, seat, slit, arse, stems, trench, tuna, waterfall, beard brush, beaver, pussy, patty, or was that a Bessie, Fanny, old girl, beef, burger, ground?" The Hairy Cunt's Guide to Sex, Sanity and Survival, or Pussy Power, or I actually wanted to call it The Day My Fanny Hair Fell Out. But it does grow back. And I won't show you. This is on video. But that'd be a bestseller. I'd also like to suggest to you that if Christine Aguilera, Britney Spears or J-Jo had written Female Eunuch instead of poor old grey Jermaine, that we wouldn't be standing here tonight having this debate, because in actual fact Germaine Greer was ahead of her time asking us to put our finger up our vagina and actually get some menstrual blood and then taste it, at which stage all the nuns in my school had an absolute smile on their face. I'd just like to remind you that we should revere the female part. In the 15th, just before the Reformation, there was this icon in Britain Sheila and the gig, and if ever you see, it's this woman who's actually crouched down and with the lips of her vulva opening, exposing her vagina, was, "Come in, boys. I am the font of all pleasure." And when women in those stages were really, really revered. It horrifies me that we are having this debate. Gynecological cancer is rampant in our community. I'm currently also doing my PhD on HPV and cervical cancer. I want to try and stop it. I am sick to death of having to work to try and raise awareness and funds. We need proper sex education. We shouldn't be calling them our funnies, our twats, our whatever. We've got to, as a collection in the community, demand correct terms. We deny ourselves the voice of adequate treatment and care. The Australian Cancer Council's policy for this election on cancer mentions women once, and that's the word breast. I think Alan Coates is so terrified of vaginas, fannies, twats, cunts and everything else, he simply can't bring himself to fund it. The politicians can't. We need funding, we need awareness. We women worked exceptionally hard in the 60s, the 70s and the 80s to try and make things better for our daughters. I'd suggest to you that we've gone right back very much to last century. We don't need to degrade ourselves in order to get this. So I'd say start taking pride in your bodies. Don't go to the ministry of whatever they are examining you. Trust Holland and Co. Thank you.
Right, back to the mighty mouse hearts, and champing at the bit is the internationally acclaimed Dr. Ian Hammond, Director of Gynecology at King Edward Memorial Hospital for Women, with green gloves. Dr. Hammond practices in gynecological oncology, colposcopy and gynecology. In fact, he practices a lot. Now, this is Susan's cue to say time and stop practicing and, go on with it. But anyway, we know that he is very well practiced, so much so that he trains others in this field, and he finds time to chair such important reviews as screening to prevent cancer. And he's also a member of the expert advisory group to the National Ovarian Cancer Programme. We're delighted, Dr. Hammond, that you found time in your amazingly hectic schedule to come and speak to us today. I really wonder that anybody in this panel would find time to travel around the world for us as ambassadors, because if you saw their CVs, they are very busy people. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stand, Dr. Ian Hammond.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm just embarrassed to be here now. I've had to listen to diatribe. It's been a very pleasant diatribe, words that bring music to my ears. I now have 2 gloves on. I'm ready for action. I have more gloves in case I have to double glove, in case there's disease in the audience. I'm very distressed. Where are the men? Could the men stand up, please? A few men. We'll meet later, guys, or if we're outnumbered, but we can have a chat later on. Now, this is serious business now. This is enough nonsense. We are from the Ministry of Sexual Examination. Do not believe what you've just heard. We are good people. We are looking to prevent cancer. We're looking to prevent disease. I am a gynecological cancer surgeon. Now, you understand what that means. It means I don't want to see people dying a death of embarrassment. They will die because they're embarrassed to show their vulva, their vagina, their cervix, and every other little bit we've just heard about. There's no need for this sort of language. It's not acceptable in this audience. Now, I want to tell you about 10 reasons, only 10, why you should invite your doctor to have a look at your vulva and vagina. Don't wait for them to ask you. I want you to get out there and show it about. How many women in this room have ever had a period? Oh, come on! All right, if you're embarrassed, close your eyes, or close your eyes. We'll try it again, or Close your eyes. No one sees what you're saying. You can bleed too much. You can bleed too little. You can bleed all over the place. You can bleed after sex, and you can bleed when you're older. Now, bleeding when you're older is actually quite serious, because when you bleed when you're older, it could be something significant. It's actually more likely to be you've had too much of that hormone stuff, which is sort of getting you all sexed up for whatever you want to get into, or maybe you haven't had enough hormone. I always say bleeding is due to too much hormone, too little hormone, or it's due to cancer. Now, in fact, most bleeding is actually due to too much or too little hormone. So that's, we all put it down to it's a change or it's the tablets or whatever. But if your bleeding goes on, for goodness sake, go and see the doctor. Very, very important. What about bleeding after sex? Now here's the little question. How many people have bleeding after sex ever? You see, there's only one person who ever had sex. Oh, you're pregnant. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's forget bleeding. But the message is, if you get bleeding that's unusual, you must take yourself along to see a doctor. Flash it about, get your clothes off, get up there and say, I want you to have a look. Because doctors get embarrassed. You have to remember that. There are only 5 symptoms in gynecology. That's why the subject appeals to someone like me of limited intelligence. Bleeding, discharge, pain, itchiness, we'll come to itchiness in a moment, and lumps. I won't ask you about discharge, I just don't want to go there. But if you have a discharge and it goes on for too long, not good. Pop along and see someone, get the bits off, you know, the usual, get your clothes off and get up there. I want you to get the speculum. Take your own speculum if you wish, or take your own gloves. And if any of you have a latex allergy, you must take your own gloves. I will let you have these if you want them before you go, it's not a problem. Now, if you have pain, you can have pain anywhere. You can have pain in the abdomen, pain in the pelvis, you can have pain with sex, and you can have pain in the vulva. All of these are a bit unpleasant. If it happens once, I don't suppose it matters much, but if it happens all the time, it's another reason to go and see, get your clothes off, do the usual, rip your clothes, you know, the business. What about itchiness? Now I'll go ask the question because it's fun. How many people close your eyes, it's okay. Have ever had an itch down there? So you all have itch down there. The thing is, one itch doesn't really matter. A couple of itches doesn't make a lot of difference. When it keeps going on, time to go and get sorted out and see what's going on. Most times it's nothing at all. Sometimes it's a dermatological condition, but it can occasionally be the start of something unpleasant. So you must go and get your clothes off the usual performance. Thank you so much. And finally, if you have a lump of any sort that's unusual, that stays for more than a week or two, you must turn up and see the doctor. So, if you've got none of the top 10 symptoms and signs and things that could give you trouble, then at least you could go along every year and have a pap smear, every couple of years I should say, and have a pap smear to make sure you're gynecologically well. Now the Ministry of Sexual Examination is offering a special competition, very, very important. We want the suggested words for a lapel badge. Now we've got a very boring badge, official vaginal examiner. What we want you to do, something along the lines of, smile if you've had your vulva examined today. Now, there will be a prize for this. Please don't worry, there will be a prize. It could be a speculum, it could be a pair of green gloves, but most importantly, if you clap for us in this competition, we will give you the prize.
Thank you, Ian. Now, if you are an author, educator and sexologist who practices sex therapy in your private clinic and heads the sexology program at Curtin University, I imagine you're very popular at dinner parties. And if you have time to go to them. And Gabrielle Morrissey is in fact the author of the wonderful Sex in the Time of Generation X, and even more wonderful, in my opinion, not being part of Generation X, of the very sassy sex manual, Urge. Now I have one piece of really important advice for you this evening. If you haven't yet read Urge, buy it at once! Rush out to your nearest bookstore and buy copies for everyone you know, and I promise you they'll never be able to thank you enough. It's brilliant. It has to be one of the most important books you have ever read if you value your sex life. Gabrielle, where were you when we were doing vagina monologues? I'm sure you were very busy working hard at changing people's lives. Ladies and gentlemen, our very last speaker for tonight, the very lovely Dr. Gabrielle Morrison.
Well, I'm going to start tonight by bringing it back full circle to our first speaker, Susan, who did say that she felt dumb saying some of the words when it comes to female genitalia. I have to say that if you're smart, you'll know how to say it well and use it well. We've heard a lot of terms that are slang tonight, and most of them are negative. But what about the positive? Honeypot, love box, palace of pleasure, Mrs. Pink, heaven, love flesh, home sweet home, lady flower, and my favorite, vertical smile. It seems there are a lot of lovely words for that which we seem not to be able to talk about. But we have been talking about it, celebrating it, loving it, and studying the origin of life since basically the origin of time. Are we really so quiet about it now? Not if you're in the know. Did you know that you can attend Vulva University to take online classes and study orgasm, advanced orgasm, sex and intimacy, erotic massage, and the wondrous vulva? If uni isn't your thing, maybe music is. An experimental techno band in England is doing their part, all males, naming their band Vulva and calling their first EP Mini Space Vulvette. Or you can celebrate your love and pride of vulva by wearing a vulva amulet. You can buy one of the 4 most popular pretty jewel necklaces, or commission one online molded on your very own honeypot picture. Perhaps you might like to keep your treasures or mobile phones, shopping lists, and credit cards in a velvet vulva purse, each with sumptuous fabric labia and beautiful button clitoris. At www.gynae.com, you can order a vulva puppet, individually handmade using silk, satin, and velvet, perfect for teaching your lover how to be a vulva connoisseur. Having heard of these hip ways to acknowledge and celebrate your vulva? Where have you been? Our increasing acceptance of the vulva isn't new. On the contrary, as we've heard, celebration of the vulva, our source of life, has occurred around the world for thousands of years. According to, and I'm not kidding, the Royal Society of Medicine in Britain, Stonehenge even, from a bird's eye view, shows an elliptical vulva with the outer stones representing the labia majora, the inner stones showing the labia minora, the clitoris is the altar stone, and the geometric center of the henge represents the birth canal. Earth Mother and ceremonial worship of the vulva has been ritualized around the world, including specifically India, North American tribes, China, Ireland, Italy, Egypt, and South American cultures. What we can't seem to talk about now once had a rich vocabulary with words as titles of respect for women, priestesses, and goddesses. So let's reclaim this rightful worship of our vulvas as our pleasure powerhouses. Phallus schmallus. We've got phallic symbols everywhere. Skyscrapers, airplanes, towers, microphones. Penis has peaked. It's time for architecture and symbolism to reflect the rounded, curved, and sensual, beautiful, and inviting, like our voluptuous Venus. Vulva's reverent home is up on a pedestal for women and for men, much like the ancient and elaborate ceremonies that praised pleasure, life, womanhood, and the mystique and power of the vulva. And another thing, let's get real. Our vulva is not our vagina. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, and of course you should, is to correct the world's perception, or at least start with the perverts here in WA, on the difference between vagina and vulva. Because scream it from the rooftops, they are different. You might ask, what difference does it make if you call it a vulva or vagina? What if parents taught their children that they have no eye, nose, or mouth, but instead gave them one word for their entire face? and called it tongue. Our vulvas are as unique and beautiful as our faces, our signature arousal anatomy, and every millimeter of it ought to be spoken about, not just stimulated. We have a lot of responsibilities to bring vulva back into the wisdom of our ancestors. We need to seize a vocabulary for ourselves, actively teach. Don't ever stop a woman before she's about to climax. Out into the community, loud and proud. Support vulva-loving artists, businesses, media, and role models, and keep our society pulsing with the Viva la Vulva philosophy. Celebrate our anatomical jewel. Pierce it, touch it, lick it, play with it, kiss, caress, and buzz it, adorn it, suck it, bring it flowers. Embrace your vulvalicious self and join the Vulvolution!
Okay, so thank you to our brilliant teams. This is going to be a difficult job, audience. But before we get to the judging section, we have our question time. Now I'm going to come around the audience and relay your questions to the team, and I'm going to ask Peter and Susan to elect a suitable member of their team to answer each question. Now, just in case you're a little bit shy, we do have a little provocation here, a little prize for people who ask the first 3 questions. So it has to be about gynecological things, okay guys? You can't ask them what underpants they're wearing. Well, I suppose that is a gynecological sort of. Okay, we have a taker. Right, here we go. Get ready for this.
I would just like to ask Dr. Hammond what range of colours you have with your gloves, please. I don't like green.
Very kind of you to ask that. I actually slipped back to the hospital to pick up a few, and I was choosing between blue, green and yellow, but I've gone for green tonight because of the rather sort of vivid colour approach. I was told to get into it. I don't know if that really answers your question, but we do have other colours as well.
I'm not sure about that question. I'm coming to you on that one. I'm not sure because the other team can't answer it. There's one down here, I believe. And I'm coming over to this lady afterwards, so we'll talk about that one in a minute.
Thanks, guys. Just wondering what's being done to actually address the level of endometriosis in the community and the understanding of it, addressing the problem and trying to work out how to fix the thing before it becomes the kind of problems that it really is.
Okay, who's going to start with that one? Looks like another one for Ian, does it?
I think that most women actually have endometriosis. If you actually were to sort of run around and look into everybody's abdominal cavity with a laparoscope, one of those things that look through the tummy button, you'd probably find about 40 to 60% of women would have a spot of endometriosis somewhere, but it only really causes a problem for about somewhere between 5% of all women that ever have it. And I think what's happening to educate people is for people to be aware of it. Actually, people are aware of it. Most young women are aware this could be a problem, and when they get pain, they often turn up at 19, 20 years of age saying, I'm worried that I may have endometriosis. So I think what's happening is more people are being aware of the condition. It's being advertised, it's discussed about everywhere. And I'd be interested to know what actually Margaret might know about this, because I think that it's to do with education in the community across the board. So you've got, oh look, it's in the book. How much do I get for that? That's pretty good.
My understanding is, and I'd just like to say I'm not a medical doctor, I'm just an ordinary old tart in the community who happened to get cancer, and that sort of set me down my path of trying to make a difference, and I have researched a bit of it. So my understanding is, from a community perspective, is that endometriosis and endometrial cancer is one that's often talked about because it's often related to the heaviness of bleeding, and women do talk about their periods and sanitary stuff's advertised on TV, so that's sort of out there. There is research going on, it is hardly curable, and I'd just like to say that if you get a gynae cancer, more women survive it than die. But the big problem with researching all of this is that We're lucky in Australia that there's 26, I think, gynae oncologists, and most of them are influential internationally, and so we're exceptionally lucky with the quality of care we get. The green gloves are a worry, I agree. However, the big thing that's stopping these guys and women, there's about 3 female gynae oncologists, is the absolute lack of commitment to funding of any sort by any politician, government or whatever in this country, and I think it is absolutely disgraceful that they are actually stopping us from having adequate research. The only reason why I'm here today is that I had a non-gestational trophoblast disease from a pregnancy, and the research into that actually you survive. Endometriosis, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, the rest, women are still dying, and I'm about to make a very big noise to Canberra, and anybody else will listen, is why don't you give us some adequate money for research? Why has Kath Mazzella spent the last 10 years of her life just trying to make awareness about terms, lumps, bumps, whatever? Why have I spent 12 years fundraising for research and whatever? I'm tired of it. I don't want to be here tonight. I prefer to be home having a martini with my gorgeous spunk of a husband. I'm here talking about clitorises, for God's sake. I prefer to be home finding out how active it is. Endometrium is one that is out there in the limelight. There is research, but we need more. And look, my big ask of you tonight is go home, have a bonk. Tomorrow wake up with a smile on your face and ring your politician and say, I still want to be around doing this for a long time, not dying of cancer. Give us some money to cure it.
Well, I think this gentleman deserves one of the prizes for the first real gynecological question of the evening.
Excuse me, Jenny, I'd give him all 3 because he could actually pronounce it.
And you get a gift voucher for Jazz International Hair Salon. Okay? Right, there's a lady here in green that I'm coming around to.
Voting is compulsory. But why do surgeons make it compulsory to shave the hair off down there when they want to go and operate around down there?
Well, I'll actually answer that. The men I operate on, I never shave them at all. So just need to say that shaving isn't compulsory at all, and certainly none of my men get shaved at all.
God, I wish someone told me that when I was giving birth 30 years ago, but they still don't. Why do they do it to women?
Well, actually, you don't need to do a shave in the vagina, the vulva, at all, unless you're actually operating on the vulvar skin. So that's the first thing. I mean, you don't need to. So this business of shaving, they call it a through shave, you know, all the hair over the mons pubis and straight down, like a Brazilian gone mad. Is that what it's called? I believe that's what it's called. That's sort of quite popular if you're going to do vulvar surgery. I mean, if you're going to operate in the vulva, like if you say you had a bearded man and you were going to operate on the face, you certainly wouldn't want to be operating through hair. So that's reasonable. But if you're operating through the vulva into the vagina and doing things that way, you really don't need to do anything to the vulvar hair. The only problem with it is some women have very long vulvar hair, and that makes it a bit tricky.
Let's not get personal.
No, we haven't. Well, you said we could talk about everything. We could wax, but I think the important
I'd just like to make a comment too here that in fact we're finding that actually our patients are coming in already shaved. Actually, another thing that I found out when I was researching is there is actually now a market for merkins, and for those of you that are not actually aware of what merkins are, they're actually pubic hair pieces. Like if you have toupees, there's actually now there's an enormous variety, and the shaving is not boring at all. It's really interesting.
Where can you get them?
Margaret, do you want to reply to that one?
No, I think that's more Susan's.
Susan.
About merkins.
I kind of like forgot what the question is now.
I imagine if you log on to Volvo University, they sell them there.
Well, I don't know, maybe this wonderful gift of $100 worth of hair, or rather hairdressing, perhaps you should go to the ladies who need a bit of trimming, but it's going to you instead. Straight to next.
I was actually told to arrive here at 6:45 tonight to pick up my tickets, and one of the few advantages of arriving at 6:45 was that I got to sit down by the bar, and there was herds of people just running past us to get their first drink. But one of the things I couldn't help but notice is everybody here is sort of, I'll be very general here, the majority of people here are sort of 40 plus and white, middle class demographics. Excuse me. What do we do to get this message to younger people? Like, as 40-year-olds, we're already sort of encountering all these problems. Surely we need to have a room full of 15-year-olds or 20-year-olds. How do we get the message across to those younger people?
We've got a 13-year-old here.
Jenny, can I start off with that answer? Thank you for raising this. This is a massive problem. At the moment, the pharmaceutical companies are actually on phase 3 trials in Australia and phase 4 in America for a human papillomavirus, which is known to cause 80% of cervical cancers. And the intention is that pre-sexually active girls and boys are going to be vaccinated. The challenge at the moment is that nowhere in the developed world or the underdeveloped world, resource-poor world, knows how to get the message out to the community that HPV actually is a precursor to most cervical cancers, let alone the fact that it's a sexually transmitted infection. And all of us would have had HPV at one stage if you're sexually active, it dissolves and whatever, but we're not having a medical lecture now. The issue is that kids don't know. Look, they have sex education and whatever, and I think that there's big problems in our education system with us as parents, that a lot of us trivialise it. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old daughter that we're into anatomy in a big way and kissing boys and wants the perfect pout and everything else and all this body image. I'm actually doing my PhD on how we're going to educate the community about sexual STI and HPV. But I think we really need, again, also to ask is the onus on the education department, or is it on us as a community? I mean, you read Dolly, Girlfriend, whatever, it's all around body image and superficial stuff, and it's not getting down, or messy periods perhaps, but the anatomy is really forgotten, and quite frankly I think the kids are too distracted with first kiss, body image and whatever to take much notice.
Anybody need to answer from this team?
Yes, I'd actually like to make a comment too. And look, I agree with some things that are said. But the other thing is that sex education really needs to be taken on in schools. That's extremely important. And for those of you that have never read my book, there's the dictionary there's actually a slang dictionary in the book, which is a way I've actually approached it to get the kids actually getting into reading about STDs. But I think as parents, everyone really needs to be promoting sexual education and talking about it, and also talking to your politician about it. One of the things that concerns me as a sexual health physician is that, in fact, the most common bacterial infection notifiable is chlamydia. This is a sexually transmitted disease that actually causes infertility of young children. And if it's left untreated, what actually happens, it causes the scarring a bit like endometriosis, so that the women who get this infection suffer from ectopic pregnancy, infertility, and may go on to actually develop pain with sexual intercourse for the rest of their lives. This infection is in fact so common that it's probably infecting anywhere from 3% to possibly 15% of our people in the population under the age of 25, and nothing is being done about it. It is extraordinary that we actually are in fact choosing to treat people for infertility rather than treating them when they actually have a sexually transmitted disease. So all I can say is that we need money for research for endometriosis, but given the extent of the epidemic of chlamydia affecting our young children, so that they can become infertile before they even get married, that this dream of a family, which is a politician's dream, and all the family subsidies, is not a reality for these people because they can never have a family. I think our politicians have got it wrong, and I think we've all got it wrong. And the only way we can really deal about it is that you guys go out and get sex taught in the schools, encourage it, and talk to your politicians and really get some funding. And promote, say, isn't there a screening program for young kids? This is so important. It is probably one of the most important health issues affecting our young population at the moment, and I would put to you that a large proportion of you never even knew how dramatic or extensive it actually was this evening. So please go out and be my ambassadors and really knock on the doors of your politicians in schools and say, we want sex education, we want to prevent our kids becoming infertile. It's extremely important.
Can I just add to that? I agree entirely, it's very important to be active in the community, but also a lot of education starts at home. And when the problem seems insurmountable and so huge, what can one little person do? One little person can start using appropriate language at appropriate times in a child's development so that we don't get the nonverbal cues and hidden messages that that's a no-talk zone, a no-learning about, a no-curiosity zone, because if they grow up knowing that that part of their body, the vulva, the clitoris, the vagina, is as precious and important and has health needs like every other part of their body, if they do have a question, they will go to the doctor.
Just finish up, Jen, would be great.
I just wanted to share with some of you a story about chlamydia, because I actually have lectured on this topic before, and once when I went to give a talk, I thought I would talk about chlamydia and koalas, and one of my colleagues actually said to me, I think koalas have 7 vaginas. And I was just dumbstruck, the number of vaginas, and I thought, Wonder Woman, we need koalas on our national flag. Here is the wonder animal. And so, being a scientist though, I actually set about researching whether facts were correct. And so actually, this is a true story. I rang the Department of Health librarian and said, I need to know how many vaginas a koala has. And she said she didn't know, but why didn't I actually ring the Murdoch Veterinary School? So I rang the Murdoch Veterinary School and spoke to the receptionist, and she didn't know. So she said, well, I'll put you through to the local koala expert. And when I actually spoke to him, he was really interested as to why I was talking about koalas and vaginas and why I needed to know that. He thought that was very interesting. But he actually was the local expert, had no idea how many vaginas a koala actually had. And he said then, well, he would contact one of his colleagues over in Queensland. And finally, I got the information faxed through to me that, in fact, the koala actually has 3 vaginas. So I think we still should have this one koala on the national flag, a representative of Australians' womanhood, this koala. And they actually have 3 vaginas and 2 uteruses. And they actually, after the birth of the first koala, the middle vagina actually closes off. But anyway, I just thought you'd like to know, because koalas actually have the same problems that humans do, exactly the same thing. And when they get a vaginal discharge from chlamydia, it's called wet bottom or dirty bottom. And I just say to my colleagues that I'm so glad I just have to do tests on women, because I've got to do a test from the wee hole and a test from the cervix, whereas in a koala you've got this one hole that they do everything in and out of, and then they also piss on you when they do the test. So I'm just glad that I work with humans.
Thank you to
all
both
it
of you.
looks, I'll tell you, that's a whole other story. But, like the cows have the 7 stomachs. And
You mean they have extra appendages to cope with the 3 vaginas?
I mean, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, right?
And all that came from that one question. Where is she? Yeah, yes. And so I think you really deserve final gift, which is another voucher from Macmillan's for hair, $100 worth of hair care from Macmillan's. And I think we have to wind up our question time, unfortunately, and thank our wonderful teams for their level of education, their expertise, their sexpertise, and the marvellous entertainment they've given us tonight. And we really value them for not just being here tonight, but for everything they've done to date in the community and continue to do, making a difference in the lives of women. Thank you very much, our wonderful team. And don't forget to buy all the books, because there's a wealth of information in the wonderful books they published. Now we get to the very important part of the evening when we decide which team wins to be the Royal Gynae Ambassadors. So, how are we going to do this? We're going to ask our clapometer here, our clap barometer, Natalie, who is, of course, General Manager of the theatre company and so very expert at gauging audience reaction. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to ask you to give your all for the Mighty Mouse Hearts. This is going to be a tough one. Okay, and on the count of 3, ready for the hefty Hollands. 1, 2, 3. I think the Hollands win by a whisker. I think theirs was a bit louder and the other one was a bit longer. So, by a whisker. However, I have to say that what a fantastic united team they would make if we could send them around the world, and we would like to present them with a little gift tonight for their trouble, and we particularly would like Peter and Ian to open theirs, because we thought it was right that they should have the first nibble. Alright, come on then Ian, let's get stuck in. Come on Peter. We'd like to demonstrate to the audience what you have. Okay. A very tasty morsel. To Kath and Natalie and everybody again for providing this wonderful evening. Thank you, our audience, for being such wonderful sports, and we hope to see you in the bar afterwards. Thank you again to our teams. Please come and take a curtain. Come and join us. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mighty Mouse Hearts and 50 Hollands. See you in the bar.
This was fabulous. He knows a lot about vaginas.